After years of rumors and start-stop production woes, Ghost in the Shell is finally 1 month away from having its big Hollywood adaptation. Now, I'm not one to judge a movie solely by its trailers and promotional material, but I have to say that what I've seen doesn't seem promising to me. I hope I'm wrong, though, and that when March 31st rolls around, we're all treated to a passable film. Sorry, but my optimism doesn't stretch further than that, because from what I gathered, the film is just nothing but a series of pastiches from the other movies in the television series. From the obvious visual callbacks to the plot details and characters, the movie appears to be a retelling of 3 different stories that were already told. Speaking from a purely pragmatic standpoint, I understand the methodology behind such a decision, that there are way more people, especially American people, who are unfamiliar with the franchise, and thus in easing into such a fantastical cyberpunk world would be smart. However, from a business standpoint, if people are unfamiliar with the property, why would they spend millions of dollars on an unknown quantity? And it's not like clinging to dear life to the source material for the fans' sake equals box office success. I can't pretend to know what is going on in the producers' heads as far as the how and why. But I do know that I'm going into the theater with the most hardened reservations I've ever had in my own personal cinematic history. I also know that this isn't the first Ghost in the Shell movie made built around artistic and narrative references to the previous entries. And I know it bites pretty hard. Made as a sequel to the standalone Complex series, which I'll cover at some point, take a chill pill. Solid State Society is the kind of movie that everyone wants until they get it, and then they wind up wondering why they wanted it in the first place. On the face of it, it sounds promising, since the standalone Complex timeline was a wonderful and involving take on the Ghost in the Shell universe, but by the end of it, it reveals itself to be a disappointing drawing of the proverbial well. I mean, it's not horrible, technically speaking, but as a fan, I'm just left feeling extremely disappointed by it. But before we go too much further, I want to make sure everyone's on the same page by linking you all to my previous reviews on Ghost in the Shell 1 and 2 here. If you're all caught up, then it's time for us to dive into the vast and infinite net, which is now folded in on itself. This is Solid State Society. We begin, yet again, with a shot of an aircraft flying overhead. God, it's like state law that a Ghost in the Shell film has to start with one of these, doesn't it?
My people have taken casualties. Agreement or not, there better be a damn good reason for us to
keep this line clear. There's no telling if there's a back hack on it. Besides, what's going down here is way out of our league.
I've located him.
Okay, time! What in the world is Motoko doing up there? I mean, besides listening to chatter? Well, after doing all due necessary research and testing, I have come to the conclusion that the reason why Motoko is perched on this, freight crane is simply because, first movie. But you see, there was a reason why Motoko was up there here, to infiltrate this boardroom and assassinate this target. Meanwhile, in Solid State Society, she's just here to listen to chatter, which she can do anywhere because it was established that these aren't radio frequencies she's tapping into, but comm links, which do not require open air to transmit. Okay, nitpick aside, there is a story developing here, as there is a hostage situation that Section 9 has been called in to deal with. Apparently, Section 9's jurisdiction has been expanded from cybercrime to general public safety as Togusa enters the scene, and then pauses for applause, I guess. Seems that Colonel Kagale has taken a poor woman hostage, demanding safe passage out of Japan, but the walls are closing in.
You won't make a public spectacle out of me? No, don't!
Shit! Why'd he do it?
Maybe he just doesn't like prison food, or maybe he just can't poop when other people are looking, or perhaps it had something to do with what Pazu said to you not 20 seconds ago.
Togusa. Looks like he's high on a reflex booster that the military uses.
I'm just saying it's a possibility. So, after Motoko pointlessly references the rest of the scene from the original film, it's revealed that the Colonel is only the latest of a series of suicides perpetrated by soldiers sworn to fealty of a General Karam, who's yet another refugee from a war that Gitz is dead set on not showing. which has always been a sticking point for me. The entire setting is built upon geopolitical upheaval and splintered governments and world wars, the byproducts of which keep getting themselves involved with Section 9, and we only know about it offhand. Outside of maybe a few scenes here and there in the first season of the television series, we hardly see anything about these wars directly, just the aftermath of them in the form of refugees and idle conversation between cases. It's in the second season that the political background has more of a presence in the story, what with the American Empire throwing its albeit diminished weight around. But the less said about season 2, the better. My point is that if you know even the slightest amount of the history and politics of the Ghost in the Shell universe, you're always going to be left wondering about more details than the material covers. Good thing they invented Wikia, otherwise we wouldn't know shit about shit. Unless the dialogue decides to drop exposition bombs.
Question. How long has it been since the Major resigned from Section 9, Tobisa?
I guess it's nearly 2 years.
That long?
Ain't no way anyone's missing that depth charge. They couldn't get that one past Helen Keller, for God's sake. This whole roundtable meeting is just one long summary to get the audience up to speed, but the Cliff Notes version is that General Karam was seeking asylum in Japan after his country fell, resorting to terrorist acts if his demands aren't met. However, if the colonel was loyal to his general, why was he so adamant on leaving Japan if Karam wanted asylum here? I mean, by the end of the movie, you know why, but it's like the thought never even occurred to the characters. But swerve, General Karam is dead, an apparent suicide just like the others. But evidence mounts that this was actually a hit job disguised as a suicide, which calls into question the other previous suicides. However, Section 9 figures that they might still be able to carry out their terrorist acts using a hospice network to spread a virus, the destination of which has been infiltrated by Bateau.
Togasa. What the hell is this?
Puppeteer? Just before Kageo died, do you remember him saying something about a puppeteer?
Come to think of it, maybe he did.
This is just a remake of the first movie, isn't it? I mean, granted, what else would you call someone who could remotely hack into your cyberbrain and control your functions, but goddammit, this is just fucking blatant. Say what you will about the second movie copying the structure of the first movie, at least that was done with the intention of creating a commentary of original versus simulation. Or maybe that wasn't the intent, but at the very least, they didn't just wholesale lift the mysterious antagonist from the first movie, complete with the slightly sweeted name. So, is it that the entirety of the standalone Complex series was intended to be a reboot of the original film? Apparently, Bateau has been flighty lately, but even he can't ignore the situation and arrives at a hospital that is supposedly housing the virus.
That car sticks out like a sore thumb around here.
Both your cars stand out, Mr. $250,000 banana yellow racing striped Ford GT. Said ugly-ass painted F430 belongs to not Motoko, who's beaten Bateau to the punch in procuring the virus, but not without a fight.
What the hell?
You can't hack my cyberbrain when I'm in here! Die, puppeteer!
You can't read my thoughts! I'm wearing aluminum foil! Now nobody can stop me from giving my message to the King of Prussia!
Bateau gives not Motoko an opening and escapes, but realizes it is actually Motoko, which sort of undermines the point of going in disguise. Then again, if she was attempting to go in disguise, why did she choose a cover that looks exactly like her? Fucking Clark Kent would tell her to get with the program! Of course, the tank driver manages to off himself too, leaving Bateau with more questions than answers, and Motoko is her usual helpful self.
Don't go anywhere near the solid state, or you'll end up killing yourself the way they did. I'll leave your car where you can find it.
Ring, ring! Your car's been stolen. No!
Hey, who's this puppeteer guy you keep talking about?
It all still remains speculation at this point, but we have reason to believe it's a rebel's code name. And we also believe that this is the person who orchestrated the deaths of the Tattooed Men and Karam. He's a super wizard-class hacker.
We are samurai, the keyboard cowboys.
Back at HQ, Section 9 has discovered a number of abandoned children believed to be a part of the terrorist plot to unleash the virus. But it's revealed that these children not only do not carry the virus, their memories have been rewritten and their IDs artificially changed to be the dependents of numerous elderly people, all of whom are connected to the hospice network.
It was originally developed with the intent of solving the aging population problem, and at the same time to prevent the aged from dying alone and unnoticed. But when NPOs learned that it was encouraging patients to remain bedridden by connecting to the net, they started rebuking it as a thinly disguised asset collection process.
Oh god, this is turning into the plot for Roshan Z!
Haruko! I just wet my bed!
So, deadly virus, kidnapped and brainwashed children, and retirees hooked up to Life Alert 2.0. Yeah, it's not adding up for me either. And when Section 9 further investigates, it turns out there's more than 20,000 other children reported as missing under the same circumstances. This, of course, triggers another virus that attacks their network. And then the old adage comes true. In case of hacking montage, break glass.
Move it!
I love that Section 9's go-to emergency hatchet is a goddamn broad axe. Did they steal that from fucking Gimli? Well, regardless, the attack has left Section 9 licking their wounds, and to make matters worse, Aramaki has just cut a deal with another section to lay off the case. And in return, they can claim they stopped General Karam's virus, since Motoko dropped it off with them using one of her other empty shells she remotely controls. This rustles more than a few jimmies.
I completely understand the point you're trying to make, Bato. But we must also consider the possibility that the Major will never return to Section 9. Her talents were more rare than ESP.
More rare than ESP? Are you saying that psychics exist in this universe now? I have an easier time believing that psychics exist in Watchmen. Yeah, in the comic, Ozymandias reveals that he acquired a brain of a psychic, cloned it, and amplified its abilities to create a shockwave during the teleportation of the giant squid in New York. And you wonder why they got rid of it in the movie. But getting back on track here, I actually rather like this scene. In the middle of the whirlwind that is this wonky bonkers plot, there is an actual scene of real human dialogue, not mission briefings and callous summaries of political events. Bato truly misses Motoko, and he is struggling with himself and his role in the expanded Section 9. The story might be about transhumanist ideas and themes, but the key word here is human. The relative peace is shattered when the children that Section 9 have recovered have gone missing again, and Proto has been backhacked. With his back to the wall, Bato finally relents and reveals that he met up with Motoko back at the hospital, and he figures that she is the puppeteer. But first, Aramaki makes a stop at Colonel Suave's house.
And you, sir? How are you feeling, Colonel Tonoda? The Colonel's hobbies haven't changed at all, have they?
I must live long enough to see this glorious future. Get on it, science. I have no goddamn clue why we're here specifically. The only thing Aramaki gets out of this digression is some intel that the last remaining member of Karam's men has been found entering the country. Which could have happened anywhere, so why here? Other than to have some fetish maid gynoids and to drop what might be the most morally repugnant statement in Ghost in the Shell history.
You should seriously think about remarrying. There's no sorrier sight than a single old man.
I decided long ago that I would never own anything that I couldn't take to the grave with me.
Is Aramaki implying that having a wife is having something to own? Isn't it though? Isn't it? When I turn this way, that means I'm done talking to you. As Bato and Saito get a beat on Karam's last man, Motoko's been busy filing away her debts to Section 6, and making a visual nod in the process. Simultaneously, Togusa gets word that they managed to track one of the missing kids back to a squalid, filthy apartment, owned by an elderly man on his deathbed. damn it, it is Rojin Z! I swear to God, if somebody decides to ask if you can copy a personality from a photograph, I am skipping this review and going Office Space on this fucking DVD!
Everything I have in this world is invested in that boy. I'd will it to some stranger off the damn street sooner than I'd let the government get a hold of it. Besides, the boy would have died of mistreatment if I hadn't taken him in.
Oh yeah, the kid's way better off starving to death in this filthy apartment. Kid's got it like Richie Rich. With his last breath, the geezer warns Togusa to stay away from the Solid State Society, and Togusa realizes that even if he hadn't shown up, the kid would have been taken away by protective services when he finally croaked, so he wound up doing nothing. Though I do have to wonder if it weren't for Togusa coming in and forcing the old man to use his last bit of health in a desperate bid to keep the kid, how long would it have taken for him to die? Before or after scabies set in? Besides, what in the world is he inheriting, really? An apartment that smells like cat piss and months-old garbage?
One day, all of this will be yours. My trousers that ride up too high, my dish of indiscernible hard candies, and my tubes of polygrip. All of it will be yours!
We finally catch up with Saito and Bato and... Okay, I can't ignore this anymore. What in the world is up with all these car scenes? People are either talking in cars, or talking about cars, or getting in cars, or getting out of cars, or following cars in their cars. Just why? I mean, I know that Production IG is just showing off what they can do with computer animation, but it's not like this all looks good. And even if it did, is this really necessary? Do we have to see every single time a person arrives at a location? What, do they think we'll assume they wish themselves there? All this does is pad the length of the running time. I swear this movie would only be 40 minutes long if they would just cut out all these go-nowhere car scenes, for fuck's sake! Bato and Saito lose track of their target momentarily, but they quickly figure that the guy is trying to assassinate someone, and they stop him before he can squeeze the trigger in a pretty intense sniper scene.
Did I nail him?
Lay low. I'll go check.
If the movie doesn't cut to a Bato-shaped hole in the asphalt, I will be very disappointed. So of course, they don't. Instead, we find out from Karam's sniper that he was fed info by a double agent. But weirdly, that double agent is also his target, Assemblyman Mune. We also learned that the puppeteer is actually not a person, but a program that controls the Solid State Society, the hospice network that links the kidnapped children to the elderly so that they might pass on their worldly possessions to them, instead of being absorbed by the state. Oh, is that all? So yeah, this whole plot is basically about kidnapping kids of abusive or neglectful parents, giving them to old people so that they can have an inheritor, and the kid winds up in social services anyway with a little pocket change, I guess, of which they can't even touch until they're 18. Truly a most diabolical scheme. While all that's happening, Togusa gets an emergency call from his wife that their daughter is missing. And then she isn't.
So anyway, I found her right after I called you. Apparently, she's been with the neighbors since this morning.
So you wait until after your husband had 10 heart attacks and panic drives his way over to your apartment before you say, false alarm. God. Fuck you. Oh, and Togusa, if you want to win Father of the Year, the car seat for your kid goes in the back, you dipshit. Well, he who ignores the warnings will get their just desserts, as Togusa is backhacked by the puppeteer, forcing him to drive him and his daughter toward a hospital. Togusa manages to piece together that this process of hacking parents, dropping their kids off with doctors to have them implant cybernetics in them, and then wiping the kids, the doctors, and the parents' memories afterward, is how the Solid State Society abducts children. Which really isn't an indictment of the society in Ghost in the Shell when you think about it. Is it just common practice for parents to drop off their kids at the doctor's to have cybernetics implanted in their skull, only for them to pick them up in an hour like it was Jiffy Lube? If only the movie intended that. Still, this has the makings of a truly harrowing scene, as Togusa is helpless, being forced to give up his daughter, knowing he won't even remember her, or she him. But it seems the puppeteer is offering him a Sophie's choice. I either give up my daughter and all my memories of her, or I shoot my daughter. Well, the little bitch didn't eat her vegetables. Kidding, kidding. It's that he either gives her up or he kills himself. And look, they come to a literal fork in the road. One brightly lit and open, the other shadowy and closed off. Wow, the subtlety is remarkable. You do know there's no way they're going to have Togusa kill himself, right?
I love you.
They killed Togusa. Fuck. I mean, the movie up till now has been pretty bullshit, but man, they pulled out all the stops for this, didn't they? The ramping up of the music, the beautiful cinematography and animation. They did everything in their power to make the death of one of the main characters as impactful as possible. It's effective, it's heart-wrenching, it's bullshit! Boo! Boo!
Boo! Boo! Boo!
Okay, I know that Motoko didn't come out of nowhere because you could plainly see the goddamn GT following Togusa's car, but how in the world did she save him? And why did Togusa fall like he shot himself?
I can't believe that you would use Togusa as bait. Didn't you stop to think that it might put his family in their crosshairs?
There were safeguards in place. I made sure of it.
Oh, well, my mistake. That makes it totally better. What safeguards did you place? Because from where I'm sitting, you just used Togusa as a honeypot. And the movie just kind of drops it, figuring that if the plot moves fast enough, no one is going to question the validity of I put safeguards in place, which apparently are just data clusters of the Tachikomas. Not sure how she got those inside his head, or how the puppeteer managed to backhack his head, but missed those. Anyway, Motoko reveals that she's been on the case for a while now, and she discovered that the puppeteer is actually a collective consciousness, a gestalt of all the geriatrics hooked up to the hospice net, creating a sort of digital rhizome absent of chronology, source, or causality. Thanks to Motoko being a cold-hearted bitch, she's able to trace the backhack to a central hub being kept at a certain hospital. Section 9 mobilizes.
They've arrived. Disengaging locks.
Hey, we didn't see them get out of that truck. How the fuck are we supposed to know they're here? Reunited and it feels so blah. But Motoko lays out that the Assemblyman Mune is most likely the one who's orchestrating this entire plot, and that Karam and his men were just interlopers who stuck their necks out too far. It all comes down to a huge raid on the hospital, which means the Tachikomas are back. I'm sure someone is excited.
Who are you?
I could tell you. Of course, I'd have to kill you then.
Before you blame the dub, just know that the line is basically the same in Japanese. Credit where credit is due, though. The assault on the hospital is a well-directed and thrilling scene, even when, once again, the movie dips into the well.
You back me up. In a couple minutes, I'll gain control of the system.
I got it. Isn't this the way we've always done it?
Well, at least they're being self-aware when they're referencing the previous movies.
Until I gain control, the physical functions of this body will cease. My only defense will be that .30 caliber of yours.
With the building under Section 9's control, the team finally confronts Mune, whose justification for abducting kids is that he's under the impression that they're all orphans, and they're being re-educated under the notion of a nationalistic, Japan-first ideology. Curious, though, is that he's unaware of the puppeteer, who reveals himself to be this guy. And he just shoots himself, and Motoko dives in after him.
Entering right visual center. Saccades have ceased. No eye movement.
What happened?
You're remaking the ending to the first movie, that's what happened! Not only is this a literal rehash of the ending, but they even reuse several shots. This is just flagrant. The puppeteer goes on to explain that the whole operation was just to save the kids from their abusive households when Mune hijacked it for his own purposes. But despite all this, there's still one question remaining. Who or what is the puppeteer exactly?
We've synchronized with countless consciousnesses over the years.
I feel like I should explain. So, during the interim of all this, Motoko was switching between empty shells to investigate without drawing attention to herself. And one of those shells happens to be, well, him. Okay, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but there's even more to this. Starting with the obvious. Hasn't the anime already explained all of this? Several times, characters expound that the puppeteer is just a program to mine the solid-state society. And surprise, you find out that it indeed was just a piece of software that gained intelligence by absorbing consciences of old geezers hooked up to the hospice net. In fact, you find out that the person who originally designed the software has been dead for the last 2 years. The exact same amount of time Motoko has been rogue. Coincidence. So yeah, all of this is just to confirm that he was indeed a collective, and he bids Motoko adieu and opts to be an invisible arbiter to guide society towards a better future. But then, it gets even more complicated. See, during said elevator encounter, Motoko mentions something that upheaves the entire story.
Loki, Conan, hold down the fort while I'm gone. Controlling 2 prosthetic bodies at the same time is apparently my limit.
Wait. The math doesn't add up. There is the boy in the control room, the woman she used to pick up the virus, which she changes out for this guy so they cancel each other out, him, and finally another shell we don't see. This boy is either Loki or Conan, but regardless, at the end of the scene, she's controlling 3, not 2. Unless she's not controlling the puppeteer here. But if that were true, why doesn't she freak out about one of her shells walking off on its own? And if she does own that shell, why isn't she surprised to see it reveal itself to be the puppeteer during the raid? Finally, there's the issue of the dead programmer. It's revealed that he too used a remote body during his work, but we also see what he looked like, and he looks exactly the same as his shell. So the only explanation is that the guy customed a shell to be built to look like him, and somehow Motoko got her hands on it, but then conveniently forgot she had it. Okay, bottom line, the ending makes no goddamn sense. And the movie winds up petering out. Motoko wistfully wonders why she quit Section 9, and discovers that just like Dorothy, there's no place like home. And rejoins. We literally went around the world just to go next door. Fuck you, movie. Very few things can get you on my shit list quite like being pointless. And unfortunately, that's Solid State Society to a T. The movie's attempts to have a mystery plot completely kneecaps the proceedings, since at the end of the day, this was supposed to be Motoko's story. But she spends over half the movie being needlessly obtuse and a veritable red herring. Nobody, and I mean nobody, was buying the notion of Motoko being the puppeteer, so the time spent building it up was all for fucking naught. That, combined with the movie's insistence on keeping up with the self-referential homages and playing copycat with itself, further compounds the pointlessness. Remake, reboot, whatever you want to call it, it's still an unavailing sit. Granted, as a Ghost in the Shell movie, the music is great because it lifted tracks from the TV show, and the action scenes, few as they were, are fun to watch. But Ghost in the Shell means more than that, and Solid State Society can't measure up. Well, March is upon us, which means I'm due for another break. But I will be back April 14th with a look at a movie from a franchise that is near inescapable. Try as I might. Till next time.
Long live your Lord High Regent Sage! Long live Benetopia!